Rain had washed the city clean that morning, leaving the air sharp with petrichor and pine as Michael B. Jordan walked through Riverside Park, hands in his pockets, hoodie up, trying to disappear into the rhythm of the trees and the hum of the city waking up. He'd come here every Sunday for years when he was home in North Carolina, before the world knew his name, before Hollywood and fame and the noise that came with it. The park had always been his place of quiet, where he could breathe, watch kids play basketball, nod to the old men fishing by the lake, and feel, for a few minutes, like just another man. But that morning, Peace had other plans. A police cruiser rolled up along the curb near the benches, slow like a shadow that hadn't yet decided whether to reveal itself. The window slid down, and two officers stared at him like they'd already written the story in their heads. "Hey, you," the older one said, voice flat, practiced. "You can't be here." Michael stopped, earbuds still humming low jazz, and looked around. "In the park?" he asked, half a smile on his lips. "Sign says open till sunset. It's barely noon." The younger cop stepped out, resting a hand on his belt. "Don't play smart. You heard the order. Move along." Something in Michael's chest tightened. Not anger, not fear, just that dull, familiar ache he'd felt too many times before. "You know," he said quietly, "you could just say good morning." The cop's jaw twitched. "You could just do what you're told." The words hung between them like a fog. People nearby slowed their steps. A jogger pulled out her phone. Michael felt every eye on him, every assumption, every whisper that built walls between truth and perception. He wasn't a threat, but he'd learned that didn't matter. He took a breath, steady, measured. "Is there a reason I can't walk in my hometown park?" he asked. "Because last I checked, the grass doesn't discriminate." The older officer stepped closer, boots grinding against gravel. "We have reports of someone suspicious loitering near the lake," he said. "Matches your description." "My description?" Michael repeated. "What's that? Breathing while black?" The younger one flinched, glancing toward the small crowd forming now. Parents, a few teens, a man with a dog. The cameras were out. The older cop noticed too. "Enough," he barked. "Show ID." Michael's lips pressed together. "No law requires me to show ID for walking." "Step back." "I'm not stepping anywhere." The tension snapped like a live wire. Voices murmured. Phones recorded. Michael could feel his pulse beating in his neck, could hear his mother's voice in the back of his mind. "Stay calm, son, stay smart." He'd done everything right his whole life, built his name with discipline and kindness, carried himself like his late father taught him, with dignity. But dignity didn't matter much when someone saw only threat. He raised his hands slowly, palms open. "You're making a mistake," he said. The officer moved forward, eyes narrowing. "Name?" "Michael," he said evenly. "Michael B. Jordan." There was a pause. The older cop's frown deepened, then faltered. The younger one blinked. "Wait," he muttered. "Like the—" Michael exhaled, a humorless laugh slipping through. "Yeah, like the actor. The one from this town. The one paying for that basketball court you're standing next to." The silence that followed was the kind that crushed pride under the weight of realization. Around them, someone whispered, "That's him," and then a small ripple of voices followed. The officer shifted awkwardly. The older one tried to mask it with authority. "Anyone could say that. You could Google it," Michael replied calmly. "Or you could look at the plaque on that bench, donated in memory of my dad. Says my name right there." The younger cop turned, reading it, face draining color. The older one's radio crackled. Static. Michael's heart was still steady, but his mind was burning, not from anger, but from something deeper. Sadness. The kind that came from realizing that no matter how far he'd come, how many people he'd inspired, some would still only see skin before soul. "You don't belong here," the older cop muttered under his breath. Maybe out of pride, maybe out of habit. Michael looked at him, eyes steady. "I was born here," he said softly. "Question is, do you?" The younger one looked down. The moment stretched like an elastic band, seconds feeling like minutes. Then came the voice from the crowd, sharp, clear, recorded by every camera. "Leave him alone!" It was a woman in her 60s, cane in hand, her voice trembling with courage. "That man built the youth center. My grandson plays there because of him." The crowd stirred. The cops froze. Michael didn't move. The tension cracked, not like thunder, but like glass, quietly, inevitably. The older officer lowered his hand from his holster, jaw tight. The younger one looked at Michael and said, "Sir, we didn't realize you didn't need to." Michael interrupted, calm but heavy. "You just needed to listen." He turned and walked toward the lake, the murmurs following him like echoes. He could have left it there, let the cameras tell the story, let the internet rage, but something in him refused to let silence win. By evening, the video had gone viral. Millions watched as he stood, patient but unyielding, teaching without raising his voice. The headlines were merciless: famous actor harassed in hometown park. But that wasn't the story he wanted told. He wanted the truth beneath it, the quiet disease of prejudice that infected small towns and big hearts alike. That night, he sat by the window in his mother's old house, rain tapping against the glass, his phone vibrating nonstop with messages, interviews, outrage. He turned them all down. "I don't want this to be about me," he told his manager. "Then what's it about?" "It's about what happens when you don't have a camera." The next morning, he returned to the park. Same path. Same benches. No cameras this time. The officers were there again, standing stiffly near their car, waiting. The older one looked different now, tired, maybe even ashamed. The younger one nodded first. "Mr. Jordan," he said quietly, "we came to apologize." Michael studied them for a long moment. "Apologies are words," he said. "Change is action." "We know," the younger one said. "We're starting training next week. Racial bias awareness, de-escalation. The chief called it mandatory after yesterday." "Good," Michael said. "But don't do it for me. Do it for the next kid who doesn't have a platform." The older cop shifted his weight, eyes down. "It shouldn't have taken this," he murmured. "No," Michael replied, "but maybe it needed to." They stood there in silence. The morning light cut through the trees, painting the wet grass in gold. Birds sang like nothing had happened, like the world was trying to move on. Michael turned to leave but stopped, glancing back. "You know," he said, "if you ever want to understand the people you serve, start with listening, not commanding." The older man nodded, the first real humility in his eyes. "We'll try. Try harder," Michael said, walking off. The park smelled of wet earth and redemption. But the story didn't end there. Later that day, an email hit his inbox from a local journalist, a woman named Camille Reyes, who'd been digging into city contracts for months. "Mr. Jordan," she wrote, "the same officers who stopped you are on the city payroll for a private security firm connected to the mayor's office. Would you be willing to talk?" He hesitated, reread it, then typed back, "Meet me at the park." When they met under the oak near the basketball court, she showed him documents, funding discrepancies, police overtime paid by a community development fund, city officials signing off bonuses for enforcement in public spaces. Michael scanned the pages, anger simmering quietly. "So they were never supposed to be patrolling here," he said. "Not officially," Camille confirmed. They were monitoring undesirable activity. That's the phrase used in the report. Michael's jaw clenched. And that means anyone who doesn't look like they belong in the brochure. That night, the rain returned, harder, angrier. Michael sat by his kitchen table, pages spread out before him like battlefield maps. He wasn't sure how far this went, but something told him it was bigger than 2 cops and a bad decision. He thought about his father, who used to say, "Sunlight's the best disinfectant, son. Bring the truth into the open and watch the roaches scatter." He opened his laptop and hit record. "I wasn't planning to speak," he began, voice calm, steady. "But sometimes silence helps the wrong people sleep better." He explained what happened, what he'd learned, what the document suggested, not accusations, just facts, questions, and humanity. "This isn't about hate," he said. "It's about honesty. If those who protect can't be questioned, then who protects us from them?" He posted it without a second thought. Within hours, it exploded. Hashtags trended. News stations called. People demanded answers. The city tried to dismiss it, calling it misinterpretation, but the evidence spoke louder than any press release. Camille leaked the rest: emails, payments, directives. By morning, protests formed outside City Hall, peaceful but determined. And yet, through all the chaos, Michael stayed calm, away from cameras, watching from the park bench where it started. He wasn't here for fame. He was here for truth. The same cops appeared again, this time walking, not patrolling, not posturing. The younger one approached. "We didn't know," he said, voice shaking. "We were following orders." Michael looked at him. "That's what they all say before history remembers them wrong." The man swallowed. "We want to help fix it." "Then start talking," Michael said. And they did. They gave statements, names, receipts. The investigation grew. The mayor's office trembled. But as the pressure built, so did the danger. Anonymous threats flooded Camille's inbox. Unmarked cars idled near Michael's street at night. He could feel it, the shift from moral outrage to institutional panic. And panic made people reckless. Late one evening, as the sun bled into the horizon, Michael walked the park path again, headphones in, trying to clear his mind. He didn't notice the black SUV pull up behind the trees. Didn't see the silhouette inside watching him through tinted glass. He only heard the faint click of a camera shutter, the whir of an engine starting again, and the low voice over a radio saying, "He's alone." The next day, Camille's email went unanswered. Michael's phone buzzed nonstop. Calls from reporters, fans, strangers, but he didn't pick up. He sat on that same bench, staring at the lake, unaware that the story he thought was about injustice was about to become something darker, something that reached deeper than he'd imagined. Because what started as an act of discrimination had peeled back the first layer of a much larger rot, and those who'd spent years hiding it were ready to make sure it stayed buried. And as the first drops of another storm began to fall, Michael glanced at the horizon and whispered to himself, "If they think I'll stay quiet, they haven't met my father's son." But what happened that night would make the world see the truth differently, and someone wouldn't walk away. Thunder rolled over the city like a warning no one wanted to hear, echoing across the rooftops and into the bones of the park where it had all begun. Michael B. Jordan sat alone on the damp bench beneath the oak tree, raindrops stitching small ripples across the lake's surface as his phone buzzed endlessly beside him. Camille was missing. That was the headline now. Local journalist who exposed city corruption vanishes after investigation. Her apartment had been found open, computer gone, camera equipment smashed. The story that had begun with prejudice in a park had turned into something far uglier. A system protecting itself. Michael hadn't slept. He'd spent the night pacing his living room, every knock, every car door outside making his pulse tighten. He wasn't a detective, but he'd learned enough from Hollywood to know when something didn't add up. Now, sitting there as the storm broke, he could almost feel eyes on him again. The same SUV from before idled across the street, tinted windows reflecting flashes of lightning. He stood slowly, pulled his hood tighter, and started walking toward it. The engine revved and rolled forward, disappearing around the curve. Michael exhaled through his nose and whispered, "Cowards!" He knew he couldn't fight this alone. The next day, he called his lawyer, old friend Marcus Tate, a civil rights attorney who'd known his father. Marcus's voice was calm but sharp. "Mike, you're treading in dangerous waters," he said. "These people don't play fair. You're rattling money, contracts, and pride." "Then let it rattle louder," Michael replied. "Camille didn't disappear because of a misunderstanding." Marcus sighed. "You think it's the city? I think it's whoever signs the checks." There was silence. Then Marcus said, "I'll make some calls." That evening, Michael uploaded another video. His tone was colder now, his voice tighter. "They tried to silence the truth," he said. "They forgot truth doesn't scare easy." Within hours, the video hit millions of views. Hashtags turned into protests. News vans lined the park entrance. And behind the noise, something shifted. Whistleblowers from City Hall began leaking documents, confirming what Camille had started. The private security firm wasn't just overbilling. It was being used to funnel campaign funds and bribe law enforcement into clearing out undesirable areas for redevelopment. The park, the benches, even the basketball court he donated, they were pieces on a board in a game of money and power. Michael walked through the rain to meet Marcus at the courthouse. The lawyer handed him a folder thick with evidence. "They can't bury this anymore," Marcus said. "But you need to be careful. They'll come after you next." "Let them," Michael said quietly. "I'm not afraid of shadows." That night, the power went out across his block. When he stepped outside, he saw the SUV again, headlights off, engine rumbling low. He stared into the dark glass, the reflection of his own face staring back, and for a long second, neither side moved. Then the SUV peeled away, tires spitting gravel. Michael went back inside and opened his laptop. He sent every file Marcus gave him to 3 different journalists and 1 national network. "If anything happens to me," he wrote in the email, "don't wait for a statement. Publish everything." He hit send and shut the computer. At dawn, his phone rang. It was Marcus again, voice trembling. "They raided City Hall this morning. FBI is involved now. They found records. Camille's investigation was legit. They were laundering through community projects." Michael's chest tightened with something between relief and grief. "What about Camille?" "Not yet," Marcus said softly. "But there's a lead. A witness saw her car near the industrial docks the night she vanished." "Send me the address," Michael said. "No," Marcus replied instantly. "You're not going there. Let the feds handle it." But Michael had already grabbed his jacket. The rain had returned, thicker, heavier. He drove alone through the slick streets toward the edge of town, where factories rusted and lights flickered like dying stars. The dock smelled of oil and salt, and every step echoed too loud. He found the car easily, a silver sedan parked crooked under a broken streetlight. Camille's press badge lay on the front seat, soaked and muddy. The trunk was open, empty, but for a torn notebook. He picked it up. Inside were pages of scribbled notes, names, dates, payments, and one phrase underlined 3 times. "Police payroll loop, check fund 41. Behind him, a sound. Boots. Slow, deliberate. He turned. 2 men stepped out of the shadows, black coats, hands gloved. One held a flashlight, the other something heavier. "You're not supposed to be here," one of them said. Michael didn't move. "Neither are you." The man smirked. You think being famous makes you untouchable? No, Michael said. But being right makes you dangerous. They moved closer. He could see the glint of metal under the man's coat. You should have kept your mouth shut, the other said. You don't want to end up like her. The words hit harder than the rain. Michael's heart pounded, not from fear but fury. Where is she? He demanded. You'll find out soon enough. The first man raised his hand, but before he could act, headlights flooded the dock. Tires screeched. Voices shouted, Federal agents! Drop it! The men froze. Michael stepped back, blinking as agents swarmed. In seconds, the two were cuffed, faces slammed against the hood of a car. One agent turned to Michael. Mr. Jordan? You're lucky we were tracking your phone. Camille? He asked. Alive, the agent said. We found her at a safe house across town. She's shaken, but she's okay. The relief hit like sunlight after months of rain. Michael exhaled, hands trembling for the first time in days. Thank God. You helped expose something big, the agent added. We've got enough to indict half the city council. You did good. Michael looked out toward the lake beyond the docks, the reflection of lightning across the water. No, he said softly. Camille did. Days passed like years. The scandal erupted nationwide. Mayor arrested, officers suspended, the private firm dissolved. Camille recovered slowly. Her first call to Michael simple. You were right about sunlight. He laughed. My dad used to say that. He was a smart man, she said. The two of them met again in the park weeks later, now filled with families, laughter, and the smell of barbecue from the community center reopening. The city had changed, slowly, painfully, but it had. New training, new oversight, new leadership. The officers who'd harassed him resigned voluntarily, replaced by a younger, more diverse team. The older cop sent him a handwritten letter that ended with the words, You made me see the mirror I'd been avoiding. Michael kept it folded in his wallet. Reporters tried to turn him into a symbol, a movement, a headline, but he resisted. I'm not the story, he said in every interview. The story is what happens when people stop pretending everything's fine. One afternoon, months later, he walked through the park again. The oak tree still stood tall, leaves whispering like memory. Children ran across the grass. The air smelled of jasmine and rain. Camille sat on the bench, typing on her laptop. Working on the next expose? He teased. She smiled. Writing about you. He groaned. Don't. Too late, she said. It's called The Man Who Taught the City to Listen. He sat beside her, shaking his head. I didn't teach anything. I just refused to shut up. That's teaching, she said. People learn from courage, not comfort. A silence stretched between them, peaceful now, not heavy. You ever think it'll stop? Michael asked quietly. The hate, the profiling, the fear? Camille looked at the lake. No, she said. But I think people like you make it harder for it to hide. The sun broke through the clouds then, golden and soft. A small boy ran up holding a basketball eyes wide. Mr. Jordan, he said breathlessly. You're the guy from the video, right? You stood up to the cops. Michael smiled. Something like that. My teacher showed us, the boy said proudly. She said you're why they built the new youth program. Michael knelt down, patting the kid's shoulder. Nah, little man. That's because of people who decided to care. The boy grinned and ran off. Camille closed her laptop. You realize, she said, your video became required training for police cadets in 4 states? Michael laughed softly. Yes, that's better than another Marvel sequel. The breeze carried the sound of laughter, the smell of wet grass. It felt like healing. But beneath it, he knew the fight never really ended. It just changed form. One night, he returned again to that bench, alone, watching fireflies blink like fading stars. His father's voice came back, steady and warm in memory. "Son, the measure of a man ain't in how loud he shouts, but how steady he stands when silence is safer." Michael smiled. "I stood, Dad, and they listened." The city lights shimmered across the lake. Somewhere, justice was still imperfect, people still imperfect, but maybe that was the point. Change wasn't thunder. It was rain, quiet, constant, reshaping everything it touched. The next morning, he received an envelope with no return address. Inside was a photo of him at the dock the night of the confrontation, taken from across the water. On the back, a note. "You exposed them. Don't stop." He didn't know who sent it. Maybe Camille, maybe someone inside, but it didn't matter. He placed it in a frame beside his father's picture. That weekend, he launched a foundation, Listen First, dedicated to community accountability and police reform. He refused big sponsors, relying instead on small donations. "I don't want to owe favors," he said. "I want to owe change." Within months, the foundation spread across states, teaching empathy, listening sessions, open dialogues between officers and citizens. Cities began to follow. The media called it the Jordan Effect. He called it common sense. Years later, during a panel discussion, a young officer stood up and said, "Sir, I joined the force because of you. That video changed my life." Michael looked at him and smiled. "Then make sure it changes someone else's too." The crowd applauded, but he barely heard it. He was thinking of that first day, the rain, the accusation, the pain, and how far they'd all come. He still walked the park every Sunday, still paused by that same oak. People greeted him, thanked him, sometimes cried. He listened to them all, every story, every wound. The world hadn't healed entirely, but maybe healing wasn't a finish line. Maybe it was a rhythm, like rain falling on earth that refused to stay dry forever. That evening, as the sun dipped below the trees, Michael sat quietly, eyes closed, listening to the sound of kids laughing by the court, the echo of basketballs bouncing, and somewhere in that music of life, he felt his father's presence, proud and still. The story that began with injustice had become one of redemption, not just for his city, but for hearts learning to see beyond color, beyond fear. And as he stood to leave, he whispered to the wind, "Justice doesn't start in courtrooms, it starts in conversations." Then he smiled, because he knew the world was still listening.